The whispers in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel hushed as Harrison Grant stepped through the double doors, fashionably late as always. At 42, the shipping magnate commanded attention not just because of his estimated $4.8 billion net worth, but because of the quiet confidence with which he moved through the world. Tonight's Children's Hospital Foundation charity auction was exactly the kind of event Harrison attended out of obligation, rather than desire a necessary appearance on the social calendar for someone of his stature. Harrison straightened his custom Tom Ford tuxedo and scanned the room, nodding briefly to familiar faces while strategically avoiding eye contact with those who might corner him into tedious conversation. His assistant had briefed him on the evening schedule: cocktails, dinner, then the auction. 3 hours maximum, he could manage that. "Harrison, there you are." Charles Wentworth, his longtime business associate, approached with a flute of champagne extended. "Thought you might have decided to skip this one." Harrison accepted the drink with a slight smile. "And missed the chance to overpay for vacation packages I'll never use." "Hardly," Charles laughed. "Well, it's for the children, and I hear this year's auctioneer is quite something. They flew her in from New York apparently. She's revolutionizing charity auctions. Gets people to part with twice what they intended to spend." "Sounds dangerous," Harrison replied, taking a sip of his champagne. "I'll keep my paddle down." "We'll see about that," Charles said with a knowing look before being pulled away by his wife toward some society matrons. Harrison made his way to his assigned table near the front, exchanging pleasantries where necessary. The Children's Hospital Foundation was one of the few charities he genuinely cared about, though he preferred to make his substantial donations privately rather than at spectacles like this. Still, appearances mattered in his world. Dinner progressed predictably overcooked filet mignon, polite conversation with strangers at his table, and the ceremonial speeches about the foundation's achievements. Harrison checked his watch discreetly. The auction would begin soon, and then he could make his exit. The lights dimmed slightly, and the foundation's director approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the highlight of our evening. Please join me in welcoming our special guest auctioneer from New York, the remarkable Sophia Winters." Harrison looked up from his dessert, mildly curious about this supposed auction virtuoso. What he saw made him forget his plan to leave early. Sophia Winters wasn't what he had expected. In her early 30s, she wore a simple but elegant midnight blue gown that complemented her warm brown skin perfectly. Her natural curls were pulled back in a sophisticated updo, and she wore minimal jewelry, just small diamond studs that caught the light as she moved. But it was her smile, confident, genuine, and somehow both professional and mischievous, that captured Harrison's attention completely. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice clear and melodic. "First, I want to thank you all for supporting the incredible work of the Children's Hospital Foundation. Tonight isn't just about writing checks, it's about changing lives." Harrison found himself leaning forward slightly, caught off guard by her lack of pretension. There was something refreshingly authentic about her presence. "Now, I know most of you have been to charity auctions before," Sophia continued, "and you're probably expecting the usual routine, but I do things a little differently." Her eyes scanned the room, and for a brief moment, Harrison felt they locked with his. "Tonight, I don't just want your money, I want your hearts." What followed was unlike any charity auction Harrison had attended. Sophia didn't just announce items, she told stories. For each package or experience up for bid, she wove a narrative about the impact it would have, connecting luxury experiences to the Foundation's mission with an eloquence that felt natural rather than manipulative. She was funny, engaging, and somehow made the whole room feel intimately connected to the cause. "And now," Sophia announced, "item number 7, this is special, folks. A private, catered sunset sailing experience on San Francisco Bay, followed by an exclusive tour of the Napa Valley wine country via helicopter, with private tastings at 3 renowned vineyards not typically open to the public." Harrison hadn't planned on bidding on anything, but something about this particular package caught his interest, Or perhaps it was just the way Sophia's eyes seemed to find his as she described the peaceful solitude of being on the water at sunset. "We'll start the bidding at $15,000, Sophia said. Harrison raised his paddle almost reflexively. $15,000 to the gentleman in the front. Thank you, sir. Do I hear $20,000? Another paddle went up across the room. $20,000. Thank you, madam. $25,000. Harrison raised his paddle again, surprising himself. He owned 3 yachts. He certainly didn't need a sailing excursion. Yet here he was, bidding. The price climbed steadily, and Harrison found himself in a bidding war with a determined woman on the other side of the ballroom. At $50,000, the other bidder hesitated. $50,000 going once, Sophia called, her eyes fixed on Harrison with an expression he couldn't quite read, amusement, perhaps, or curiosity. Going twice. $55,000, the other bidder called out. Harrison didn't hesitate. $75,000. A hush fell over the room. Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly, her professional composure momentarily slipping to reveal genuine surprise before she recovered. $75,000 from our generous bidder in the front, going once, going twice, sold. Sophia's smile widened. Thank you, sir, for your extraordinary generosity. The room burst into applause. Harrison nodded briefly in acknowledgement, wondering what had possessed him to spend $75,000 on something he didn't need. The answer stood at the podium, already moving on to the next item with that same captivating energy. The auction continued for another hour, with Harrison bidding on and winning 2 more items: a private cooking class with a celebrity chef and a first-edition collection of classic literature. By the end of the evening, he had spent over $200,000, far more than he had ever spent at such an event. As the auction concluded, Sophia thanked everyone for their generosity. Together, you've raised over $1.2 million tonight for the Children's Hospital Foundation, a new record for this event. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Harrison found himself applauding too, impressed not just by the total, but by how Sophia had orchestrated the entire affair. She had transformed what could have been a tedious obligation into something genuinely engaging. As people began to mingle again, he decided he needed to meet this woman who had somehow gotten him to spend $200,000 with just the power of her words. He made his way toward the stage, where Sophia was speaking with the foundation's director. As he approached, she turned and their eyes met properly for the first time. "Mr. Grant," she said, extending her hand. "I wanted to thank you personally for your generosity tonight." Harrison took her hand, surprised she knew his name. "You're very good at what you do, Miss Winters." "Sophia, please." Her handshake was firm, confident, "and thank you. It's easy when the cause is so worthy." "Harrison," he offered in return, "and I have to admit, I don't usually bid at these events. You're quite persuasive." "I'll take that as a compliment," she replied with a smile that reached her eyes. "Though I'm curious, a man with your resources probably doesn't need a sailing package. Was it the helicopter tour that appealed to you?" "Actually," Harrison found himself saying, "I was thinking the package might be more enjoyable if shared with the person who convinced me to buy it in the first place." The words had left his mouth before he'd fully processed them. Harrison Grant did not typically make impulsive invitations to women he'd just met. Yet here he was, essentially asking this auctioneer to accompany him. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Harrison feared he'd overstepped. Then her expression softened into something more thoughtful. "That's a very interesting proposition, Mr. Grant Harrison," she corrected herself. "But I make it a policy not to mix business with pleasure, professional boundaries and all that." Harrison nodded, respecting her response even as he felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Of course." "Very sensible. However," Sophia continued, "since the sailing package doesn't officially begin until next month and my contract with the foundation concludes tonight." She reached into a small purse and extracted a business card. "Perhaps we could discuss your generous donations over coffee sometime. Purely professional, of course." Harrison accepted the card, a simple cream-colored rectangle with Sophia Winters, benefit auctioneer in elegant script. "I'd like that very much." "Good." She glanced over his shoulder. And now I'm afraid I have some other donors to thank, but it was a pleasure meeting you, Harrison. Likewise, Sophia. As she walked away, Harrison realized he was still holding her business card, running his thumb absently over the embossed lettering. For the first time in years, he felt something unexpected anticipation. 3 days later, Harrison sat at a corner table in a small cafe in downtown San Francisco, checking his watch. He'd suggested they meet at the Fairmont's restaurant, but Sophia had countered with this unassuming place instead. "Better coffee, fewer interruptions," her text had read. The bell above the door chimed and Sophia walked in. Out of her formal attire, dressed in dark jeans and a simple white blouse with a camel-colored blazer, she looked no less striking. Her curls were loose today, framing her face. Harrison stood as she approached. "Right on time." "A professional necessity," Sophia replied with a smile, sliding into the chair opposite him. "When you're in charge of an auction, punctuality is everything." They ordered an Americano for her, espresso for him, and fell into surprisingly easy conversation. Harrison learned that Sophia had started her career in marketing before discovering her talent for auctioneering somewhat by accident. "I was at a fundraiser for my college alumni association," she explained. "The scheduled auctioneer canceled last minute, and since I'd done some public speaking, they asked if I could fill in. I had no idea what I was doing, but apparently I was good at it. We raised twice what they expected." "And you've been doing it ever since?" "Not immediately. I finished my MBA first, worked in marketing for a few years, but I kept getting asked to conduct auctions for friends' charities, and eventually I realized I could turn it into a career. Now I travel around the country working with different foundations." "That's quite a niche," Harrison remarked, says the man who owns shipping companies on 3 continents. Sophia countered with a raised eyebrow. Harrison smiled. "You've done your research." "I always research potential major donors before an event," she admitted. "Helps me tailor my approach." "And what was your assessment of me?" Harrison found himself genuinely curious. Sophia took a sip of her coffee, considering him. Shipping magnate, self-made, notoriously private. Generous but selective with charities, not known for impulse purchases. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Until now, apparently." Harrison laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised even him. "Fairly accurate, though I'd argue the sailing package wasn't entirely impulsive." "No, what was it then?" Harrison considered the question. "Let's call it inspired." Their coffee stretched into lunch, and Harrison found himself sharing stories about building his shipping empire from a single cargo vessel he'd purchased with money borrowed from his grandfather. Sophia listened attentively, asking insightful questions that revealed her business acumen. "You're not what I expected," Harrison said finally. "What did you expect?" Sophia asked. "I'm not entirely sure. Someone more flashy, aggressive, the stereotypical auctioneer." "Perhaps," he admitted, "you have a way of getting people to open up." "It's part of the job," Sophia said. "People don't just give money to causes, they give to people they connect with." As they parted ways outside the cafe, Harrison found himself reluctant to end their conversation. "I have a business dinner this evening that I can't reschedule, but I'd like to see you again." Sophia hesitated. "Harrison, I should be clear. I'm only in San Francisco for another week before my next event in Chicago. I travel constantly for work." "I'm familiar with demanding travel schedules," he replied. "I'd still like to see you again, even if just for dinner before you leave." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, dinner, but there's something you should know. I don't date clients or donors as a rule." "Is that what this would be? A date?" A smile tugged at her lips. "I suppose that depends on where we go." "Then let me surprise you," Harrison said. "Tomorrow night." "Tomorrow works," Sophia agreed. Harrison watched her walk away, realizing that for the first time in a very long time, he was genuinely looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. The following evening, Harrison sent a car to pick up Sophia from her hotel. When she arrived at the address he'd provided, she found him waiting outside a small, unassuming restaurant in North Beach, the city's Italian district. "Not what you were expecting?" he asked, noting her surprised expression. I thought billionaires only dined at places with multiple Michelin stars, she admitted. Harrison smiled. Some of the best meals I've had have been at places most people have never heard of. This one's a family-owned establishment that's been here for 3 generations. No reservations, no website, just incredible food. The restaurant was indeed modest, just 12 tables in a warmly lit space with red checkered tablecloths and black and white photos of Italian landscapes on the walls. The owner greeted Harrison by name and led them to a corner table. "You come here often?" Sophia asked after they'd ordered. "Whenever I'm in the city," Harrison confirmed. "I discovered it about 15 years ago when I was walking around the neighborhood after a particularly disastrous business meeting. I was hungry, angry, and not paying attention to where I was going. Ended up here, had the best pasta of my life, and have been coming back ever since." "So there's a sentimental side to Harrison Grant," Sophia observed with a smile. "Don't tell anyone," he replied. Bad for the ruthless businessman image. Their dinner stretched for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly from childhood memories to favorite books to places they'd traveled. Harrison found himself speaking more openly than he had with anyone in years, drawn in by Sophia's genuine interest and insightful observations. "You know," Sophia said as they shared a tiramisu, "when you approached me after the auction, I thought you were just another wealthy donor expecting special treatment. And now," she studied him thoughtfully, "now I think you're a man who spent so long building an empire that you've forgotten there's a world outside of it." The observation, delivered without judgment, struck Harrison with its accuracy. That's perceptive. It's a common pattern. People get so focused on success that they forget why they wanted it in the first place. She took another bite of dessert. "What did you want it for, Harrison?" The question caught him off guard. "Security, initially. My parents struggled financially my whole childhood. I never wanted to feel that uncertainty again. And now, you've had security for decades." Harrison considered this. "Habit, perhaps, the challenge of it. I enjoy solving problems, creating efficient systems. But not just for the money anymore." "No," he agreed, "not just for the money." As they walked along the waterfront after dinner, Harrison found himself reluctant for the evening to end. The city lights reflected off the bay, and a gentle fog was rolling in typical San Francisco weather even in summer. "I sail sometimes," he admitted. "Not on my yachts, those are more for entertaining clients, but I have a small sailboat I take out alone when I need to clear my head." "That surprises me," Sophia said. "I wouldn't have pegged you as someone who enjoys doing things without a crew." "There's something about being alone on the water," Harrison explained. "Just you, the wind, and your own decisions. It's the purest form of freedom I know." Sophia nodded. "I can understand that. For me, it's hiking, just me and a mountain trail. No phones, no people asking for things, no pressure to perform." They stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, partially obscured by fog but still magnificent. "Thank you for tonight," Sophia said. "It wasn't what I expected. In a good way, I hope." "Yes," she confirmed with a smile. "In a good way." Harrison hesitated, then asked the question that had been on his mind all evening. "Would you have dinner with me again tomorrow?" Sophia turned to face him fully. "Harrison, I meant what I said about my travel schedule. I leave for Chicago the day after tomorrow." "I understand that," he said, "and I'm not asking for promises or commitments, just dinner." She seemed to be weighing something in her mind before she finally spoke. "I've spent my career helping raise money for good causes. I've worked with hundreds of wealthy donors, and I've made it a point never to cross that professional line." Harrison nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "I respect that. But," Sophia continued, "I've also never had a conversation like the one we had tonight." She took a breath. "Yes, I'll have dinner with you tomorrow." Harrison felt an unexpected wave of relief. "I'll pick you up at 7. Their second dinner led to a third, and then to a morning walking through farmers' markets and an afternoon at a small art gallery showing works by local artists. In the span of 5 days, Harrison found himself spending more leisure time than he had in years, his usual packed schedule rearranged by his assistant without complaint. On Sophia's last evening in San Francisco, They sat in a quiet corner of a jazz club, listening to a talented quartet. Harrison watched her as she swayed slightly to the music, eyes closed, fully present in the moment. It struck him how rare that quality was in his world of constant digital connectivity and multitasking. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked, catching his gaze when she opened her eyes. "That I'm not ready for you to leave tomorrow," Harrison admitted. Sophia's expression grew serious. "Harrison, we've had a wonderful few days, but my life doesn't work like this. I'm on the road 3 weeks out of every month, different cities, different events. I understand that. My schedule isn't exactly predictable either. It's more than just logistics," she said. "I've built a career being independent, unattached. It works for me." Harrison nodded. "I'm not trying to change that, but I'd like to see where this might go. And how exactly would that work?" "Long-distance dating between two people with unpredictable schedules. I own a private jet," Harrison reminded her with a slight smile, "and I have business interests in most major cities." Sophia shook her head, but she was smiling too. "Of course you do. All I'm suggesting is that we don't write this off before it's had a chance to begin." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, the music filling the space between them. "I'm in Chicago for 2 weeks, then New York for 10 days after that. I have meetings in Chicago next week," Harrison said. "And I keep an apartment in New York." "Of course you do," she repeated, this time with a laugh. "All right, Harrison Grant, let's see where this goes." What followed were 2 months of what Harrison's assistant began referring to as the courtship tour. Harrison found reasons to be in whatever city Sophia was working in, scheduling business meetings around her auction dates. They had dinner in Chicago, attended a baseball game in Boston, walked through Central Park in New York, and explored art galleries in Philadelphia. Between visits, they talked nearly every day, quick morning calls, lengthy evening conversations, and text messages throughout the day. Harrison found himself sharing thoughts and observations he might previously have kept to himself, wanting to hear Sophia's perspective. "You know," Sophia said during one of their evening calls, "when I first met you, I thought you were just another billionaire used to getting whatever he wanted." "And now?" Harrison asked, echoing their earlier conversation. "Now I think you're a man who's worked so hard to build something that you forgot to enjoy the view from the top." The observation hit home. Harrison had indeed been so focused on expanding his business that he'd rarely taken time to appreciate what he'd built or to build a life outside of work. "I think you might be right," he admitted, "though that seems to be changing lately." 3 months after their first meeting, Harrison's sailing package from the auction was finally scheduled. By then, he and Sophia had seen each other in 6 different cities, but they had yet to define exactly what was happening between them. "I still think it's ironic that you're using your own auction purchase," Sophia said as they boarded the sailboat in San Francisco Bay. "Especially since you own multiple boats." "None quite like this one," Harrison replied. "The vessel was a classic wooden sailboat, lovingly restored and maintained. Besides, this way the donation still benefits the hospital." The day was perfect, clear skies, steady wind, and temperatures in the low 70s. The captain took them out into the bay, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the city's maritime history. When they were well away from shore, he asked if Harrison would like to take the wheel. "Actually," Harrison said, "I'd love to show Sophia how to sail if that's all right." The captain nodded and stepped aside, allowing Harrison to guide Sophia to the wheel. He stood behind her, his hands gently covering hers as he explained how to feel the wind and adjust their course. "It's all about balance," he explained, his voice close to her ear. "Finding the perfect alignment between the wind, the water, and your direction." "Sounds like a metaphor," Sophia replied, leaning back slightly against him. "Maybe it is," Harrison agreed. They sailed for hours, eventually anchoring in a quiet cove for a gourmet lunch prepared by the private chef included in the package. As they sat on deck enjoying the meal, Sophia turned to Harrison. "I've been offered a permanent position," she said suddenly. Harrison set down his glass of wine. "Where?" "The Children's Hospital Foundation here in San Francisco. They want me to be their director of development. No more traveling from city to city. I'd be based here, overseeing all their fundraising efforts. Harrison tried to process this information. That's quite a change from what you're doing now. It is, Sophia agreed. I've been a nomad for years. The idea of settling in one place is both appealing and terrifying. Are you considering it? Sophia looked out at the water, then back at him. I am, for several reasons. Harrison felt a surge of hope but kept his expression neutral. What reasons would those be? Professional growth. The foundation does amazing work. San Francisco is a beautiful city. She paused. And there's someone here I've become rather fond of. Harrison reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I hope that someone feels the same way. Does he? Sophia asked, suddenly vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen before. More than you know, Harrison said softly. I've spent my life building companies, Sophia. I'm good at seeing potential and taking calculated risks, but what's happened between us isn't calculated at all. It just is, and I don't want it to end. Sophia squeezed his hand. I've taken the job. I start in 3 weeks. The helicopter portion of their excursion was just as spectacular, soaring over the Golden Gate Bridge before heading north to Napa Valley. They toured exclusive wineries, sampling rare vintages and speaking with vintners passionate about their craft. But through it all, Harrison's mind kept returning to Sophia's news and what it might mean for them. As the helicopter returned them to San Francisco at sunset, the city spread out below them in a tapestry of lights. Harrison turned to Sophia. Move in with me, he said. Sophia's eyes widened. What? When you start your new job, move in with me? Harrison, we've only known each other for 3 months, during which time we've spent more meaningful hours together than I have with anyone in years, he pointed out. I know what I want, Sophia. I want to build something with you, not just stolen days between your auctions and my meetings. Sophia looked out at the city below, then back at him. You have a 10-bedroom penthouse, don't you? Harrison laughed. Actually, only 6, but there's plenty of space. That's not what concerns me, she said. Harrison, I've been independent my entire adult life. I make my own way. I'm not looking to be a billionaire's companion. That's not what I'm asking, Harrison said seriously. I'm asking for us to build a life together as equals. Your career, my career, but a shared home to return to. Sophia studied him for a long moment. I'll need my own space, a place that's mine within yours, of course. And I pay my own way proportional to my salary, but my own way. Harrison nodded. Anything else? A slow smile spread across Sophia's face. Yes, you need to kiss me right now. Harrison didn't need to be told twice. 6 months later, Harrison stood at the edge of his penthouse terrace, watching the sun set over San Francisco Bay. Behind him, the sounds of conversation and laughter drifted through the open doors. The Children's Hospital Foundation Board meeting had just concluded, held in his home at Sophia's suggestion when their usual venue had a plumbing emergency. There you are, Sophia said, joining him on the terrace. She was dressed in a tailored suit, her professional attire for the board meeting, but she'd kicked off her heels somewhere inside. Everyone's leaving. Dr. Patel says to thank you again for the space. Harrison turned, drawing her into his arms. Happy to help. How did it go? Incredibly well. The new fundraising initiative is already exceeding projections. We're going to be able to expand the pediatric research program a year ahead of schedule. That's wonderful, Harrison said, genuinely pleased. In the months since Sophia had taken over as development director, the foundation had flourished under her leadership. Her innovative approaches to fundraising had energized donors and significantly increased contributions. What about you? Sophia asked. How was your day? Productive. Closed the deal on the Asian shipping routes. Harrison had spent the morning in video conferences with partners in Singapore and Hong Kong, finalizing an expansion that had been in negotiations for months. That calls for a celebration, Sophia said. Should we go out tonight? Harrison shook his head. Actually, I had something else in mind. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small blue box. Sophia's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring. Harrison. I had a whole speech planned, he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "About how you've changed my life, how you've shown me what it means to truly build something worthwhile. About how I never imagined finding someone who challenges me, supports me, and loves me exactly as I am." Sophia's eyes glistened with tears. "And here I thought billionaires always stuck to the plan," Harrison smiled. "You've taught me the value of improvisation." He took the ring from the box. "Sophia Winters, I love you. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." As Harrison slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss, he reflected on how completely his life had changed since that charity auction just 9 months ago. He had walked in expecting a tedious evening of obligation, and walked out having met the woman who would become his heart's true home. The sunset bathed them in golden light as they stood on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms. From billionaire to beloved, from auctioneer to fiancé, their unexpected journey had only just begun. 1 year later, Harrison and Sophia stood hand in hand on the deck of his sailboat, not one of his luxury yachts, but the small, personal sailboat he'd mentioned on their first date. A small group of their closest friends and family surrounded them as the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. They had chosen to marry on the water, with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background and the city where they'd fallen in love spread out before them. It was a far cry from the lavish wedding most had expected from a billionaire, but it was exactly what they wanted: intimate, meaningful, and true to who they were together. At the reception held at their home, Sophia tapped her glass to gain everyone's attention. "Harrison and I want to thank you all for being here today, but we also want to share some news." She looked at her new husband, who nodded encouragingly. "In lieu of wedding gifts, we've established the Grant Winters Foundation, dedicated to providing medical care for children whose families can't afford it. And to kick it off, we're donating $50 million to build a new wing at the Children's Hospital." The announcement was met with applause and congratulations. Later, as they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Harrison pulled Sophia close. "Happy?" he asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied. "You know, when I stood up at that auction podium, I never imagined the handsome billionaire in the front row would become my husband. And I never thought the auctioneer who convinced me to overspend would become my forever," Harrison said with a smile. "Best money I ever spent." Sophia laughed and rested her head on his shoulder as they continued to dance, surrounded by those they loved, their future stretching out before them like an open sea full of promise, adventure, and the greatest fortune of all. A love neither of them had been looking for, but both had been waiting to find.